Well, thank you, Jason. We are so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Yeah, excited to be here. I'm excited to dive into the conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about just how you created your personal brand, all the work behind it. Like, is there like a secret sauce to doing that? Obviously, it's really important to create a personal brand. How do you do that? How does one go about creating that?
Yeah, I think it's taken me a while just in my career to focus more on kind of the process and the inputs and things that you can control versus outcomes. But I think if I reflect on kind of the journey I've been on, it's really doing some pretty deep like reflection in terms of who are you from a strengths perspective, like what do you give a shit about, from a conviction standpoint, and then just putting the work in and day out to do that. So to me, it starts with that internal, like your personal why and self-reflection in terms of understanding like really who you are and what you can contribute to the world. and then and then it's just day in and day out, it's putting the work in to build that brand. And it should really, to me, it's not an intentional thing that you do as much as the personal brand as a reflection of all the little things that you do in terms of how you connect with people, the content that you put on social, the content that you create to put out there and to kind of build your brand, to how you are investing in yourself from a learning and growth standpoint. And so for me, like it's been with the Garage Group, I've had this huge conviction around helping organizations to be entrepreneurial, to learn and grow as they've pushed forward. And a lot of times I think it's easy to look at the new business that was launched or the new product that was launched. But in reality, it's leaders that are being courageous to one step into these kind of uncertain times around their business and to be able to push themselves forward, right? And so that's my personal brand, is really pushing organizations and pushing leaders to embrace a lot of those approaches. So the content that I put out, how I just push people one-on-one in conversations of asking questions and either challenging or encouraging, all those things to me contribute to a personal brand, at least for me.
So
Right.
how did you start the Garage Group? Was it kind of organically kind of formed into this, like creating your personal brand and helping businesses do that? Or did you start the Garage Group in order to do that? Like, how did you get into it and how did it start?
Yeah, so it was really, I've always been entrepreneurial since as a kid. I had like paper routes, and I always knew I wanted to start business, and I've always loved entrepreneurship. And I think it took this is comes back to the personal brand question or whatever, right? Because I didn't know really who I was. I didn't know kind of how I was wired, what a lot of my gifts were, and I didn't have a lot of life experience. So like coming out of college, I felt like I needed to go work for a little bit to get some experience, life experience, and that sort of thing. And then I think about what 8, 9 years in, I really started feeling the entrepreneurial itch to where, hey, this is what I'm wired to do, and I need to jump in and do this. So it was a combination of me knowing that I'm a serial entrepreneur and I needed to embrace that and tap into it, and that it was finding kind of the right partner and the right market opportunity and then just jumping into it. And I would say the passion for innovation and entrepreneurship came first, but then as I got into it and I continued to learn and grow, I think, as I was talking about before, like my personal brand kind of is evolved and come out of that to where it is about challenging leaders and organizations to grow and continue to grow, right?
So sorry, Steph, is it fair to say like a personal brand is more of your passion, just kind of narrowed down to what you want to do and then expressing that in a certain way?
It is, but I think for it to be meaningful, it has to be hooked to being of value to other people. Like I love Apple, it's a cool brand, but it's like integrated in part of my life, right? It's highly functional, it's high design, right? And so to me, it has to be something you're passionate about, because that's what allows you to put the thousands of minutes and hours into like honing it and crafting it and pushing it forward. But it's really, to me, a reflection of what you're passionate about, but also something that's highly valuable to other people, right? And so that's where I feel like when you can kind of marry those two up, you can really create a brand. But I mean, because it could be a value to people, and if you don't give a shit about it, you're not going to stay with it, and people are going to be able to see right through that.
I got it.
If you're super passionate about it and it's a value, then that authentically just comes out, and and you have a way of impacting people in a certain way that you can't, right? Otherwise.
Yeah.
So your like goal and your motto, or I guess your like what your garage group's like main goal is to try to get big companies to operate like a startup. Is that
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Keep
because
that
like if you think about it, most big organizations, they have like a lot of processes, that tight division of labor, and they become successful on a certain business model, right? And even pre-COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market, and COVID has like accelerated a lot of change. And our mission and our kind of ambition is to help a lot of these organizations take an entrepreneurial approach to growing, to stay relevant. So sometimes that's, if their core business got hammered because of COVID, how do they take an entrepreneurial approach to fix it and to continue to stay relevant to consumers and customers? And then in other cases, it's what are the next things they can step out into and to continue to grow, right? And from a leadership perspective, most organizations, and executives, it's not a knock, but a lot of executives are promoted because they're the smartest person in the room, and they're mastering the existing context. And that's great in stability, but in uncertainty, you have to be a master at searching for new ways to add value, to reinvent yourself, to build new skills and experiences, but also to just experiment with new ways of adding value in the market, right? And that's, startups and entrepreneurs are exceptional at solving uncertain challenges and adding value that way. And so that's what we bring to the table.
I love that, because so often these large companies, you kind of lose that entrepreneurial mindset and how they got there in the first place. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about execution. It's not about searching for new ways to add value. And
right.
Startups, entrepreneurs are exceptional at search.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So whenever you started Garage Group, obviously you weren't initially going after, excuse me, these huge brands like Nike and a lot of the customers that you have now. How did you break into those companies?
Yeah, I think it's first is like we experimented, my business partner and I, it was just the two of us out of the gate with just figuring out, okay, we have this cool idea, this cool mission, but what does it actually really look like to add value? So we started out with some smaller brands with Cal and Procter Gamble, smaller brands within those organizations. We worked with some services companies, but it was really about a couple of years of experimentation that helped us understand, okay, what is our meaning in the world? Like, how can we help versus what are we not going to do anymore? And the conviction for having successful pilots and how we could help really drove our conviction for continuing to push forward, right? And I think if it's one thing like just to start a company, it's another like if you're going after like Fortune 500 type companies. And we've kind of learned it the hard way, but we've gotten there, is like you have to have extreme conviction for what you do. You have to have not only a service or a solution or a product that solves a market need, but it has to be highly differentiated and just exceptionally good. And then to me, you have to show up authentically over a long period of time. Like, you don't just expect to knock on somebody at Nike or Procter & Gamble's door and then get the business. Like, there's been some relationships that I've been building over 8 years, right? And I truly believe, particularly like when you're building something meaningful, you have to play the long game. And I think too many people get impatient in terms of, okay, it didn't work that month or that week or that quarter. Whereas if you have conviction for it and you continue to put the work in, that's to me what drives the opportunities.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I feel like that's the difference between a very successful salesperson and a good salesperson, is in being in there for the long game.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone like looking to get into that big company, have that next big deal across their desk?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the number one thing is, of the companies that you want to serve, like how deeply do you understand their needs, the problem that you want to solve, like who's responsible for buying solutions in that space, what are they already doing? And then I think when you have that backdrop, it allows you then to kind of be self-critical on, hey, is our solution good enough? Is it differentiated enough? Maybe it is, but maybe we're not communicating the value as strongly as we could. And then just truly understanding those needs. Because I think, to me, exceptional sales in general isn't even about sales. It's just solving meaningful problems for people. And so if you understand the problem in a deep way, and then you understand the solution, and then you're communicating the right way it should work. If that's not working, then I would go back to say, do I understand the customer I'm trying to serve? Do we actually have a great product or not? Or do we need to innovate and make it stronger? Or do we have a gap in how we're communicating it? Those are the things that I would think about.
So wait a minute. So going back to what you talked about with, like, your relationship building, right? Like, you didn't just wake up and have Nike as a client or Procter Gamble, right? You had like those relationships that you built over the years. Tell us a little bit of your secret sauce when it comes to, like, how did you even start that relationship, or did you just find their contact and start emailing them? Like, what was like the secret behind even just starting a relationship, not necessarily having them as a client, but starting that relationship? I'm curious, like, selfishly, I think, for myself.
To me, it goes back to how deeply do you understand, one, those organizations, and two, the problem that they have, right? Because then to me, if you do that, then it's easy to me to orient your sales and marketing activities to really reaching those customers. And so for me, it started with conviction for the problem we were solving, and then the belief in how we were solving it was, one, important, and two, highly differentiated in the market. And then it was really, to me, really going all in. This is back to the personal brand hook, but really going all in on producing exceptional content that drove that message, that helped with awareness and getting in front of the right people. But then to me, it's just relentlessly being out there, whether it's cold reach outs over LinkedIn, showing up at conferences, being on social media, like LinkedIn primarily a ton. It's just having conviction, and then just strategically working kind of a process of lead generation to getting people up to speed on what we do, and then staying in front of people until there was the right opportunity to work together, right? And I think we want to think about success in events like, hey, I got this project, or we got an RFP, or we won this business. But I encourage our team in this, and it drives me, is it's about the process, it's about the inputs, and it's, did I do the 10,000 touches over the month, the previous month, to produce kind of the RFPs and the proposal opportunities and the won business for this month or this quarter.
Right.
Yeah, so to me, it goes back to just putting the right work in.
That makes so much sense, because sometimes you're like, well, I'm not going to work on it. It's not an official role, right? It's not an official RFP, like you said. And and if you don't make those touches, then you'll never get that opportunity, right? If you don't
Absolutely. Yeah. Because to me, I think we want to wait for marketing to hand us over the warm lead, or we want to we just want to wait for the opportunity to be right in front of us. And I think if I reflect on our success as a company, I've driven the kind of the strategic approach to it. It's just going out and winning, creating opportunities for ourselves. And because we've done our homework in terms of who is the client, what's their situation, how we can add value, and strong content game early, strong brand, but then being able to unearth those opportunities and turn them into projects and business. And but it's embracing an entrepreneurial approach to sales and marketing and the integration of the two versus, hey, this is just the role that I play within this like big sales process.
What competitive advantage did you have over your competitors? Like what makes Garage Group different than your biggest competitor out there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think we brought, even though we were helping being entrepreneurial innovation, like we brought an entrepreneurial approach to a pretty static and fixed process. And so a lot of the big companies' division of labor was organized around a set of like very specific capabilities. So qualitative research or ideation or quantitative idea testing. And we brought a lot of those elements together. And I think we did that. We did 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was very unique. I think it's become almost a commodity now, right? So that back then that was the differentiator. Today it's really, I would say, combining all those things, but moving exceptionally fast. And we have a lot of like really strong previous like client side leaders at the Garage Group. So it's the leaders that are running that work and that process. And we've been doing it for a decade now. So it's the compounded learning and just the relentless learning and getting better at every step too.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Just constant learning, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I love entrepreneurship, because it's not about like where you end up, but it's about the journey, and it's about learning and getting better every day and challenging yourself to do so. Like you can read books and all that stuff, but it to me, it's about applied learning. And I don't look at it as failure as much as I look at it as you're working a process to figure out kind of like to be successful, right? Whether it's to win the business or it's to deliver a successful project. And that just comes from just relentless application and trying. Did it work? Not, course correct, and keep going. And
right.
you have to learn and grow through that.
Speaking of that, was there like one thing that maybe happened where you completely failed and you're like, oh shit, I'm not going to do that again? You really learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think when we first started, I wouldn't call this a failure, but it was a huge inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started the company, we did a lot of experiments and we stayed busy. We were able to like pay ourselves salary and that sort of thing. But our targeting was all over the place, and it was really hard to justify like scaling to me, it's as an entrepreneur, it's hard to justify scaling a business when the customers you're serving are all over the place. And we basically decided, I think it was like summer of 2014, like if we're actually really going to build a meaningful business here, we have to focus. And when we did that, we started saying no to a lot of projects. And that was hard. And like halfway through that, I'm like, man, is this a mistake? Am I going to have to go get another job? And then we finally, I think we ended up getting Adidas as a client and Abbott Nutrition, and did our first project with Heinz at the time. That was even before Kraft Heinz, and but started seeing the success. But that was the moment that I felt like a real entrepreneur. Before, I just felt like I was kind of self-employed doing innovation work, right? But it's to me, those moments of inflection of like, okay, if we're gonna build something meaningful, we have to focus, and we have to build a repeatable process on how we're going to get clients and start to set up the work so that we can hire the team, right? That was probably the biggest and early inflection point for me.
Nice.
Oh,
God. Sorry, like hijacking the question.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, is that kind of how you stay relevant too? it was at that inflection point that helped you stay relevant, or is there like something else that kind of helps your team stay on point and relevant with all these brands?
Yeah, I think like it's, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. You guys familiar with that book at all?
Yes.
That to me is, I don't know if like we kind of learned it from him or just drove it, but I think it's a good illustration. To me, it's so easy to get fixed on what you do or how you do it, not why you do it. And I think what enables leaders in teams and our team, the Garage Group, to be successful is I think we have a really solid conviction for our mission and the value that we want to drive for clients. But how we've done it in the past and like what we do, that changes, right? Like our business model over the course of the Garage Group has changed multiple times. The methods and approaches we use have changed, but what hasn't changed is the mission and the outcomes we're trying to drive for clients. And I think it's so easy to get locked in with a fixed mindset to kind of how you do what you do or what your role is or what your job description is, versus saying like, what's the value that the market needs from me right now? And I think COVID has been this amazing inflection point for people to say, I know it creates uncertainty, but I think it creates a massive amount of opportunity to say, what is the value really do I have to this organization or this team? And how do I need to learn and grow to continue to stay relevant, right? Don't be locked into everything that's falling down around you, but say, how did the world change and how can I step into that change and learn and grow as a result, right? And I think our team does that really well. And I think it just comes back from operating from that why place versus kind of just the functional things that you do day in and day out.
Right. I 100% agree with that. Going back to your why, what is your why? I was going to ask you, so congratulations, first of all, on selling your business.
Oh, thank you.
You sold it in June of 2021, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is awesome. That's a huge success. So what made you decide that this was a time to sell your business as opposed to just keeping it and staying on? And kind of what was that deciding factor? And like, are you still involved and kind of where to from now
so
on?
I started the Garage Group like about 11 years ago, and had it, as you mentioned, a successful exit mid-June, and I'll be on helping the transition the business for a year. And I think it's a really hard thing, one, to start it and build it, but then two, to exit. But I feel like if I'm really staying true to myself in terms of that learning and growth, like I feel like I feel like personally I'm ready for that next like big challenge. I deep down know I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor, and I almost feel like I wanted to build this and sell it so that I'm able to kind of jump into the next thing. And I honestly, I don't know what that is. I'm kind of working through that right now, but I just know deep down that that's what I needed to do. And I believe in myself 100% that I'll figure out whatever I do next. And I want to continue to learn and grow and challenge myself. And so I love the mission of the Garage Group. I love the team. The two members of our leadership team that bought it are exceptional. So love them to death. And it's cool being in a place of enabling two really strong female leaders to take over and continue to grow the company. So I love that. And I think I'm just ready for what's next. Like I want to continue to learn and grow and challenge myself. And I feel like I try to represent that to the market. And if I don't do that myself, then that's not very authentic, right? So like that's what I'm about, and that's what I want to embrace and do.
Yeah, I love that. That's exciting, and I can't wait to hear what's next. Have you had some of your clients like reach out to you and have you want to come on board with them and, still give advice? Have you had anyone reach out to you like that?
I've had I think it's more in the because like my sweet spot is like really building TGG brands, and then kind of the strategic sales and marketing. So I've had a lot of leaders reach out to me for those types of roles, but I really like ownership is super important to me. And so one of the things that I feel like I'm really focused on is either buying another company and or getting into a situation where I'm able to have some equity, but also just build something like really meaningful. So yes, people have reached out, but I almost feel like I'm just kind of being patient.
Right. Don't rush it.
No reason to.
You chatted about reading books, and when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned Vibe, and was it Vibe and Build?
Oh yeah,
You mentioned.
Absolutely.
We're big on books here.
I know we're huge on books, so that's on my list. I wrote it down. I haven't read it yet, but that's the next on my list. The other thing we were chatting about was, really maximizing on your referrals. And I don't know if like that corresponds with like, once you got a big name brand like, Adidas or Jack Daniels or something like that, if the referrals from those large organizations led to another large organization. But we were chatting about that, like how to maximize your referrals. And that's just like one thing I wanted to ask you too was, how did you do that? Was there like a secret sauce that you found, or?
Yeah. I think like it's an interesting thing, because I think in this kind of sort of end of COVID, post-COVID world, a lot of like big trade shows are shut down. So from a lot of B2B companies, a lot of traditional like lead gen channels like are just completely demolished, right? And I think it's forcing teams to kind of think through what's next. And I would just say like a lot of our business has come from referrals, and kind of on reflection, I don't think we ever like ask for them outright, but I think it's more of how does your team show up? Like, what's the culture like of a client working with your team? Is it infectious? Do they enjoy that? Like, do you truly add value and do exceptional work? And I think when you're able to build that kind of relationship with your clients, like we are, like a lot of our team members who do the delivery of our work are the ones that really build those lasting relationships and have the impact on clients. But I think that's the kind of stuff to me that then drives referrals, right? Because it's your brand. What's the value you're putting out from a content perspective? It's how does every single member of your firm or your company interacting with clients? Like, what is that relationship? How does it feel? And then how great are you from a delivery perspective, right? And I think when you can nail those things, that you really create the preconditions for kind of word of mouth referral as you go along, right? And I would just say that whether that's within a client company, brand to brand, and or with clients that are referring us to other peers at other organizations, and or clients that I'm seeing unprecedented movement. I'm sure you guys are being kind of in the staffing world too, like unprecedented movement of talent to different organizations. And if you have a great relationship with somebody, they're going to take you if they have relevant needs in the new context, right? So to me, it goes back to how do you treat people? Does your brand and your company and your culture like really resonate and add value? And then if that happens, I think referrals kind of come out of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you have to be trustworthy. Like someone has to be able to trust you to give referrals, and you have to represent, them well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in kind of wrapping everything up, is there one piece of advice that you would give someone who maybe is looking to start a company and wants to, do something on their own, and what would you tell them?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. I like this one. So that courageous minds only, that's up on my wall. Like that's our mantra at the Garage Group, and it's something I live by, and it really means you don't have to be ready to get started. You have have a vision for yourself of what you might want to do and have conviction for it. But courageous minds only means have the courage to start and recognize that the process is actually what's going to reveal the answers and the personal growth as you go along. And so somebody, whether that's you're jumping into a new role, you want to start a company, or even you're maybe struggling a little bit as an entrepreneur, like embrace that courageous minds only mentality. Like you, and again, like I it's personal for me too, because I think I maybe even waited a little bit too long to start the garage group, because I didn't feel like I was quote unquote ready. But it's, to me, it's putting yourself in the situation to learn and grow, which will help push you forward. Don't wait to be ready, and don't wait to have the right answer to get moving. It's the actual process of applying yourself and trying is what brings the right mentors, the right experiences, the right failures that ultimately you can pay forward into success.
Love it. Do you have your own podcast?
I don't.
Have you ever thought about it? I love the name Courageous Minds Only for a podcast.
We have talked about it. I do Courageous Minds Only chats. We do them like once a quarter. We used to do them live in pre-COVID in New York and Chicago.
I love it.
But I've been doing them recorded. So I interview corporate leaders from everything to like new technology to just how they're growing their businesses, how they're being courageous in the trenches of like Fortune 500 companies. So
that's great.
It's close to a podcast, but I guess we could do one at some point.
Yeah, why not? All right. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to connect.
Yeah, no, thank you. If anyone has any questions for Jason, feel free to email us at liveboldandbossup@gmail.com. And as always, don't forget to rate, like, subscribe to Live Bold Boss Up on all major platforms. And until next time,
Live bold and boss up.